So I'm really pleased to be joined by Sarah Booth. Sarah, thank you for giving up your time to join our Q&A this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Pleasure. I will give a really super quick précis of your impressive career in about 60 seconds for people listening, and then we're going to dive straight in, and you're going to talk more about your career journey. So, before we hit record, I asked about your wonderful new role as Global Marketing Director at Ancient and Brave, and the fact that you're so recently and you're still counting it in weeks. So 11 weeks into the role, what a brilliant B Corp business. And I would say that, as a senior marketeer, you've got a lot of transformation experience, driving positive growth. I know sustainability is one of your big passions and interests, so we'll talk more about that within it. And previous roles, some great brands, OVO, ASOS, VCCP, so you've done sort of agency and client side, as we in the recruitment world would refer to it. So thank you. I know it's busy when you're new into a role. Let's start, if we may. Would you mind giving an insight into your career journey to date? How did you get to this point, and any particular highlights from along the journey?
Yeah, of course. I've had think what we politely call a bit of a squiggly career, been both sides of the table a few times. So I actually started straight from university, slightly by accident. A careers advisor said I might like to be a strategist, so I tried it out at BBH in Manchester, and I happened to work on the GHD pitch, and I just found strategy so fantastically interesting that I was kind of hooked. So I went to London and spent 6 years really learning the strategic trade after I'd been at McCann in Manchester. And I just really loved the science and art sort of parts of how we strategically think about human behavior, and we influence people's behavior in amazing ways by thinking about how they really interact with pieces of art. And I just really adored that. And I really loved, I guess I gravitated to brands that I think played a significant role in people's lives. I'm not so good at FMCG. I was always quite good at digital service brands. I've done O2, I've done Virgin Media, I've done hotels and car hire, things that are useful. And I really liked helping people to understand why different organizations might help them out. And so then I got to a point where I thought, I love all this, but am I fulfilled? And I actually started to see creativity and strategic creativity a bit more broadly than coming just through the advertising channels, as if you really think carefully about what you're trying to achieve and what strategy can inform, a whole organization can be your creative department. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to brand strategy in-house, and I amazingly was presented with this opportunity to go to ASOS and set up the brand strategy team there in the department. And the task was really, how can we connect the business to the brand, not just the marketing, but how can we really breathe the brand through the organization so that it behaves more collectively aligned on brand, and we can get better work out the door. And that was just such a formative experience for me. I thought I really felt like I'd been unleashed. And we were able to bring multiple teams of cross-functional people together to do these incredible things. And you saw creativity coming out of all sorts of places, from the legal department and, from the buying department. I just found it fantastic. And then I went from there to OVO Energy, where I did a similar piece of transformation work as we acquired SSE. So I was having a practice in my head at being a marketing director. And then about 8 weeks after I landed there, they said, "We're just going to buy SSE, by the way." And I thought, I don't know if this is practicing anymore. But we had an amazing time looking at how do you bring a legacy brand into this brand. How does the minnow eat the whale, if you like, and do it in a way that's really brilliant for the customer. And since then, really, I've just kind of pursued that interface between creativity and real structural business change and growth and performance, but always through a lens of really loving how we interact with our customers and what we're really doing for them. That's sort of And then I guess I took some time after OVO, did some consulting again. It was good to be on the other side of the table again and hear what sorts of things people were finding challenging. Did some sustainability qualifications, as you said. And then recently I was thinking it's time to come back in-house. I feel like so much is changing. Sometimes you really need to be at the core face. And at the same time, my old boss from ASOS gave me a call and said, are you free? And so here we are, 12 weeks in, 11 weeks in.
And what a fantastic brand. And you mentioned there about sustainability, and I know that this is something that you're both passionate and qualified in. Would you mind just sort of sharing your learnings on your insight to sustainability?
So, I mean, I did a zoology degree at university, and the natural world's always been, I grew up on a farm, the natural world's always been something that has been really important to me. And I think towards the latter part of my career, I started to think, I suppose, what is the role of marketing and in an industry really that invented or certainly made consumerism successful in a post-consumerist society? And am I going to be on the right side of history here if I don't think about what role I take? And so I've become really interested in the right kind of business. I think, we don't all agree with capitalism, but I don't always think we can fight sometimes I think the smaller fights can be the more impactful fights. So, I alone am not going to be able to fight for a degrowth agenda. I support people who do, but what I can do is look at the right kind of business, people who are doing amazing things, B Corps, really taking responsibility for everything that they do. And I can be responsible for increasing their share of market to an unfair level, increasing the share of market of people generally who are doing the right thing, and increasing the cultural desire that we have as a society to make good choices, not because we're told that we have to, but because it's what we want to do. And I think that's what marketers can do. They can recreate a new culture which encourages people to see as cool the things that we need to be doing and the culture and the society that we need to live in. And we can guide and usher people towards that new way of being. And I take that responsibility quite seriously. And I like to instill it into my teams now. And I like to think through that lens. And I think more of us should do it. So it really guides my thinking. My principles are quite strongly held, and it guides where I choose to work and where I don't choose to work. And, much of the more external talking that I do will often focus on that and the role I think as marketers we need to be playing in the future.
Was that one of the attractions for you with this role at Ancient and Brave? Was there a B Corp?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the problems with a principle that's quite tightly held is, any strategy tells you what you shouldn't do as much as it does what you should. And it really does exclude quite a lot. So it's almost quite a relief when you, I think it's one of those manifesting things. If you hold out for long enough, the right thing will come along, but you have to go through a lot of different JDs and kind of soul searching. Should I apply for this role? Does it really allow me to do it? Will I feel like I'm doing what I want to be doing in my life? And Ancient and Brave, absolutely. Being a B Corp, having a really, I think, profound wellness message, amazing sourcing, amazing ethics, really female heavy team as well, which, I think we need to sort of, one of the things we need to do to move to a more just society is to rebalance leadership, as we know. And so lots and lots of factors were really important to me as I looked at the choice that I made and whether this was the right thing for me.
Oh, good for you. And I wanted to ask you about leadership, because I know you're a very natural leader. Does it influence the way you would lead in a business that is very sustainable, forward thinking? Does it have an impact on the way you lead a team?
That's an amazing question. Everyone always says that when they need a little bit more time to think, don't they?
It's not to put you on the spot, but I know that you're a very natural and instinctive leader, but clearly the business will have a different set of purposes, goals, and there are and as you progress in that direction, I wonder whether that influences the people you hire, how you lead them, whether there's a kind of cultural influence there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of self-selection in these kinds of organisations. We definitely also saw it at OVO. We had we launched Plan Zero when I was there, which was a science-backed initiative, targets SBTI backed plan. And you definitely get people who really, especially if you make these things famous, who really resonate with them, and therefore they come to you because of that, and it drives their day to day. And you can really get this sense of, we're all here to put a man on the moon, that really strong central theme running through an organization. So I think to a certain extent, you don't always have to really, really push. I would say sometimes in really ambitious organizations, and all the organizations I've worked in from a client side perspective are really ambitious, you do also have to recognize that for some reason, sometimes these more sustainable objectives come with an expectation of kind of more of a steady working environment, and that's not necessarily what you get. And I think the real trick of leadership in these organizations is to have people really doing the right thing and not cutting corners when the pressure is on, but also really pushing and seeing that there's as much urgency to do the right thing as there is in a kind of more, I was going to say traditional, but more kind of a less sustainable organization with less of those values at its heart. I like you say, I lead very high context, high expectations, and high trust. And I think that tends to naturally help people to make good decisions.
I think what that comes down to is, you're saying businesses that have real social purpose, sustainability, within their DNA, the culture attracts specific people. So by definition, you have people joining these companies where they buy into that end goal, and that creates a momentum of it, a positive momentum of its own. What about some of the key priorities for senior marketers at the moment? And I appreciate they are broad and varied, but be very interesting to get your perspective as to what, some of those key 2 or 3 priorities would be for a senior marketing leader right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously going to say the word, aren't I? So I think AI is such a fascinating thing in that it's imperative, I think, especially in a business that's at the stage of growth that ours is. We're scaling up in the UK and starting up in other markets. As you're having conversations, people are naturally interested in how you're future-proofing yourself and what you're doing to make sure that you are kind of fit for the next chapter of both your business's future, but also the future of kind of our society, because I think AI sits at that level. But I think that the priorities are super fascinating. So many people, so I've just written notes, I've written AI and then I've written humanity beside it. And so I think AI is this amazing, it's like saying what you're doing about digital, isn't it? It's so vast that you have to check it up. And the thing that I'm super interested in is how can AI sort of stop the wastage, help us to learn, and help us to unlock our creativity more rather than doing our creative stuff for us. And because I think it should be a real interest of marketers today as we hurtle towards AI. We as an industry rest our value on human creativity, but humans' happiness is often really, really reliant upon moments of flow, pushing yourself to your limits, being creative, all of these things that actually AI risks taking away. And I think, whilst brands are not going to be able alone to solve anything, I think that they need to, similarly to how saying marketers need to take responsibility for how we portray society, what we say and what we do. And I think we have to really think about the humans in our system and make sure we're connecting with them on a human level, that we're making sure that our own human teams are still able to be fulfilled, and that we're really looking after what it is to be a person as we work out how to be more efficient with these systems and tools. So I think those two things are kind of, for me, inextricably linked, and probably the thing that, if it was something that kept me up at night as a marketer beyond sustainability, it's definitely, what does all this mean? Like, how do I train juniors if AI can do the junior job? How do I connect with customers if we think that we could make lots of our advertising in AI? Like, how does this actually work? What does it mean for humanity, and what's my role in that? And then I think just, you know, if I was to be texting other marketing people, which I love to do, and one of the things I found so interesting about becoming a marketing director is just how strong the community is. There's all these secret WhatsApps, and you get in and you're like, oh, it's great. You know, is just the growth agenda that we all work into, or many of us work into, and how you reconcile that or find that and sell appropriately in a world that's really challenged, in a world of geopolitical stress. Like, where do you find growth? Where do you find appropriate growth? How do you think about this? How do you sell appropriately? Because I think brands that don't do it right these days, just, they damage themselves. So we've got pressure on the one side, and then we have a human reality on the other side. And I think for me, those are the three things. I'm not quite sure if those are everyone's things, but kind of the retention of humanity in a new technology world, the need to utilize AI in order to stay ahead, and then how do you grow responsibly as a business in a world where your customers have got more on their minds than they've ever had before, I think.
Some pretty big things that you've managed to cover off. But I like the using sort of AI as a conscious enabler rather than a replacement. And thank you very much for those. Now to things about giving advice. So if you were thinking of yourself kind of, you know, earlier in your career, that's that senior marketing manager level, the head of level, what guidance would you share with anyone who's now listening to this going, this is great, fascinating, what do I need to do to keep myself on this trajectory to get to a director level?
Gosh, it's really interesting, isn't it? When I was headhunted for OVO, and I was like, I'm not going, I'm not ready. So firstly, I think believe in yourself is really important. My dad often says to me, how's your imposter syndrome? And I always say, it's so healthy. So I think the first thing that I would say is, you know, if you're there where you are and you're feeling like you might be ready, and if there's anything that is about self-doubt in your mind, don't doubt yourself, because we're all winging it to a certain extent. Like, nobody knows what today is going to bring and how to do it in any role. So I think somebody once said to me, everybody's winging it every day. And it was really good advice. And I think it's probably what pushed me over the line to take the job that I'd been offered, that I felt too nervous to take, because I think that's something that we never really talk about, do we? Not just how can I get there, but what if someone offers you a job and you don't think you can? So I think do it, have a go. You'll find amazing things in yourself. You'll find you're capable of more than you imagined, would be the first thing. And then I have this conversation with my friends a lot, as marketing is so broad. And I sometimes think finding your perfect director role is about finding the bit of marketing that you're really brilliant at, and then really thinking, I'm prepared to wait until I see one, because they're all different shapes and sizes. They are not the same job. I'm prepared to wait until I see one that I know that I've got the 80% of the role is my bit, because you do both. You have to have belief in yourself, but you also have to go into a role where when you land, you have the best chance of doing it well for the first 3 weeks and building your confidence up. So I think it's half tell yourself you can and you will, and then half and find the one that's the best fit there's always going to be a healthy amount of I don't really know how to do that, but find a job with a bit in it that you feel super confident that you can absolutely smash it out, and then you'll be brilliant at the rest of it.
Excellent. Okay. And then staying on the theme of kind of advice and guidance, you will have seen from other Q&As, we talk about positivity and mindset. And I am a big believer in my book, The Successful Candidate. There's a whole chapter on mindset and magnetism. It is crucially important for success. What rituals, habits do you have that enable really good positivity mindset that you could share?
It's just such a rich topic, isn't it? I think you have to know. So I have a few things that I've worked in some really high pressure environments. So firstly, I think one of the most important things to start with for me is where are your edges? You can't perform in any role if you aren't able to make sure that you spend time on yourself. I think the brand that I'm, at Ancient and Brave, we kind of believe that wellness is not a nice to have. It's a powerful act, but it's brave to do it for yourself. So looking after yourself, knowing if you need to have some morning light, or you need to eat before a certain time, or you need to go to bed at a certain time, and really, you need to spend time with your family. Like those things that are foundational to you, they're not selfish. Self-care is not selfish, it's a power act. So that, I think, is a real recalibrate in your mind anything that you think is selfish or indulgent or a waste of time as an investment in yourself, your performance, both in your career and your life. I think that's so important. Holidays aren't a luxury. Time off is not a luxury. Eating well is not, taking time, watching Selling Sunset. All of those things are critical. And then, do you know what? As a little one, I think it's really helpful from a positive mindset perspective to think of a set of words that really work for you to describe difficult things at work in a way that releases tension. So anyone who
like this
will know that I use the word kerfuffle all the time. And I think kerfuffle is one of the most wonderful words, because if something's really gone wrong and everybody's all nervous, you can really diffuse tension by saying it's a little bit of a kerfuffle, but don't worry. We're going to be fine, and everything's exploding left, right, and center. Also, if you need people to pay attention, but again, you don't want it to feel too heavy, you can say, well, we've got a little bit of a kerfuffle going on here. And I think my team's quite like that, because they sort of can see it as a diffuse way of paying attention to the right things, but not overdoing them. It's a diffuse and way of being clear on what's important, but not overdoing it, and remembering we're in marketing. And I have a number of words like that I just think do help to keep a levity in a team, no matter how difficult it is. And, of course, I was running a marketing team in the middle of a lockdown, leading the communications around how to use a life-limiting service for people who might have a pay-as-you-go meter. So it was quite serious. And I think the language that you use is so important in how you speak to your team about both good things and difficult things.
Yeah.
Is that useful? Was that helpful?
Yeah, it is. It's both are very relevant, using appropriate language to diffuse tension. And your earlier point about self-care, one of the things I speak about quite a bit is energy, and it's the same idea, is just being really conscious about that. Where do we all by definition need energy in order to deliver at work and outside of work, and we will find things that give us energy and drain our energy, and it does come back, to your role. I would always say to people who are looking for a role, if you can establish what gives you energy and what drains your energy, you need to ensure that you don't take a role that has any more than 10 or 15% of an energy draining skill within it, because it's not for you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But yeah, I think those are really good tips. Thank you very, very much for that. And thank you very much for going through all those questions.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you.